If you thought leaving the narcissist fixes every issue, think again, because it does not. As a matter of fact, things often get worse before getting any better. But why? Well, because of the emotional struggles you face as a consequence of surviving complex narcissistic abuse trauma. Now, I'm not saying that you should not leave because there is no hope for you. What I'm saying is that you need to be grounded in reality to avoid feeling disappointment. Hi, I am Danish, a narcissistic abuse recovery professional. The topic for today's episode is 6 emotional disasters you have to survive after leaving the narcissist. These are not just passing feelings I'm talking about. These are life-altering emotional states that demand your attention, healing, and deep compassion for yourself. Number 1, the dopamine crash that leaves you feeling numb and exhausted. You experienced narcissistic love like an addiction, didn't you? Your life was a roller coaster of high highs and low lows, unpredictable yet somehow predictable in its chaos. One minute they flooded you with so much attention, of course it was fake, showering you with affection and praise. The next, they vanished without a trace, leaving you to deal with a deafening silence. This back and forth dynamic drastically altered your brain chemistry, similar to a substance addiction. Your brain became reliant on the intense bursts of dopamine triggered by their love-bombing episodes, idealization. The abrupt withdrawal of these dopamine spikes plunges you into a state of emotional numbness and hollowness. Suddenly, the peace you longed for feels uncomfortable and alien because your brain has literally forgotten how to exist without the adrenaline and dopamine-driven chaos. You wake up and everything feels dull. Interactions feel meaningless. Normal routines feel bland. The contrast between emotional intensity and the silence now creates a biochemical vacuum. Adjusting to this new reality takes time as your neural pathways recalibrate. Normalcy initially feels unsettling and almost frightening because your brain needs time to literally detoxify and rediscover a healthier baseline. You see, you're not broken, you're just healing from emotional chemical warfare. Now, I'll be explaining all of this in a lot more depth in my upcoming event. The topic will be how to break your trauma bond with that narcissist in 5 practical steps. If you want to book your spot right now, click the I button above or the link in the description of this episode. Number 2, the guilt and self-doubt looping in your head. The narcissist turned you into your own worst enemy. How? Through relentless gaslighting and brainwashing. They manipulated your reality until you questioned every emotion, thought, and decision you made. You stopped trusting your gut. You began apologizing for existing, didn't you? Over time, they convinced you that you were the root of all the issues, inherently flawed, overly sensitive, or even malicious. They projected their own insecurities and darkness onto you, making you internalize their narrative as your truth. Examples of their gaslighting tactics include constant accusations of wrongdoing, twisting your words during conversations, and punishing you for expressing normal, healthy, and valid emotions. You said something innocent, and they made you feel like you robbed them of their life. You committed a crime. You cried, and they mocked you. Basic Darrow. Even after they are gone, this negative internal dialogue does not disappear. That's the crazy thing. Instead, it grows louder and more intense. You may find yourself panicking whenever you do or say something reminiscent of their abusive reactions. This emotional trauma results from deep psychological imprinting, where your brain internalized their voice as your own inner critic. Undoing this mental programming requires intentional and dedicated trauma healing plus therapy. I cannot emphasize all of that enough. You're not weak for feeling this way. You were just trained to distrust yourself, and that training must be gently undone. Number 3, the phantom messages and closure you never received. There are times when you swear your phone buzzed or vibrated, but when you check, there is nothing. Your subconscious mind still waits for a closure that never arrives, an apology, acknowledgement of wrongdoing, or a simple validation of your pain. However, narcissists rarely, if ever, provide genuine closure. It is like mourning a death without the finality of a funeral. Your mind logically understands they're gone, but your emotional and physical body still exist in the past reality, causing moments of profound confusion and sadness. You may reach instinctively for your phone to call them or prepare meals and plans with them subconsciously, only to painfully remember their absence each time. You may sit in a cafe, imagining them walking in. You hear a voice that sounds like theirs and your stomach literally drops. This stage is particularly distressing. It forces you to confront the painful truth, the reality that you must create your own closure and do that independently. Accept the harsh reality that you may never receive any acknowledgement or validation from them, and that is incredibly challenging, but ultimately necessary for your healing. Real closure comes when you validate yourself, not when they validate you, because they can't. Number 4, carrying complex grief and mourning the fantasy that you thought was real. You're not grieving the narcissist's true nature. You are grieving the illusion they initially presented or idealized version you desperately wanted them to be. You fell in love with their mask, and when the mask fell, your heart shattered. When I personally realized my own mother was a covert narcissist, and that too a long time ago, it felt as if a significant part of my identity had died. Accepting that the loving, nurturing, least abusive person I believed her to be was nothing more than a facade meant acknowledging my entire past was built on deception. The grief stemming from this kind of loss is deeply profound and complex. It's not something you can easily overcome and move past. Instead, you learn to live alongside this grief. That's how you grow. Rebuilding your life piece by piece is how you move forward. You mourn not only them, but the life you thought you had with them, you had together. The grief comes in waves, sometimes gentle enough to navigate, other times really powerful enough to leave you feeling overwhelmed and emotionally drowning. You feel like you're grieving someone who never existed. Mourning this fantasy version of the narcissist is critical, though, because it grounds you in the painful yet necessary truth. What is that? That the person you fell in love with never existed. The reality that you lived in was nothing but a fantasy that was created by them through their abusive tactics. Number 5, the unsaid things you wanted them to know. There were countless things you desperately wanted to express to that narcissist, like how deeply they shattered your self-esteem, how profoundly their actions impacted your sense of self-worth. You mentally composed powerful monologues, didn't you, stating clearly how much they damaged and manipulated you. You destroyed my trust, you wanted to say. You used and discarded me. Yet these words were never spoken or sent because deep inside you knew, that they already understand the damage they have inflicted. They simply do not care. They are not clueless, they are calculated. Accepting these unsaid truths feels like carrying an overwhelming emotional burden, containing a silent scream trapped permanently within your chest. You want to scream into a pillow, punch the wall, or write a book just for them, but you do not, because you know they would not read it with the soul you wrote it from. Number 6, and the last one, the sacred rage you now quietly have to carry. You do not scream, as I said, or lash out externally. Rather, your anger quietly simmers beneath the surface, and that gets masked by everyday routines and superficial calmness. You fold laundry and perform daily tasks while internally replaying unfinished arguments and unresolved conflicts. You smile politely at friends and coworkers, maintaining a composed demeanor, while inside you tremble with suppressed fury. You express your gratitude for having escaped that relationship, yet deep down you resent each second you spent in that emotional captivity. Such a paradox. To others, you appear graceful because you are that, you're strong and resilient. But internally, you feel like you are constantly navigating, finding your way through a war zone. This quiet yet intense rage is sacred, emerging from the realization of just how deeply you were violated by that narcissist and how you were manipulated emotionally. You see, you have to recognize and validate this anger at the deepest level possible, because it can become a powerful tool for your recovery. But at the same time, you have to be cautious not to internalize it, not to put yourself down, not to blame yourself for having done things you did not do. Because I know a lot of survivors of narcissistic abuse keep blaming themselves. Oh, why did I stay for such a long time? Why didn't I leave early? Why did I put my children through that hell? You did not. What you know now, you did not know back then. The kind of freedom you have today, it was unfathomable, unimaginable, incomprehensible when you were in the trap. So the first thing you need to do is you need to validate this anger fully, because you are literally waking up from what I call a psychological coma. You are coming back to life, and you're going to feel different sensations in the body. It's going to feel intense, especially if you have been asleep for years and now your reality has changed. You are going to feel different emotions, which does not mean you will punish yourself for a crime you did not commit. So you should use this anger, this sacred rage, as a motivation. You should channel it properly so that you express it in the way that keeps you moving forward. You cannot take it out on the narcissist, because you know what happens next. Your expression of anger makes them feel they are in power still. You use your anger to become your greatest version possible, and a total nightmare to the narcissist by living your purpose. With that, let's bring this episode to an end. Thank you so much for listening and watching. I'll talk to you in the next one. Until then, as always, let the healing begin and continue.